Now that you've got an overview, let's look in more detail at how some of these regimes survive and end. And I'm going to focus on military regimes, single party regimes, and personalistic regimes. And the stress here is going to be on composition and membership incentives in these regimes. The duration of these regimes and the process of democratization is going to vary. So in military regimes, we tend to find the most short-lived regimes. The military is composed of a broad swath of society. People who are in the military are interested in maintaining unit cohesion. That's their top priority. And they're sensitive to popular opinion because these people come from various socioeconomic backgrounds. They're recruited into the military, especially in states where you've got, especially in states where you've got conscription. People are recruited into the military from various socioeconomic backgrounds. They've got different ideologies, different interests in general, but all of them share this higher value on the military's survival and efficacy, and also the territorial integrity of the state. So these are the two main goals of people within the military. Keep the military intact, keep it effective, and also keep the state intact, maintain state's integrity. So Geddes illustrates the machinations of military coups as a battle of the sexes game. It's like date night. The basic premise of this is that you've got a couple, boyfriend, girlfriend. Each one prefers, both of them prefer to stay together, but they differ on their options for what to do on a given night. So the woman wants to go see a movie, the guy wants to go see an opera. And the point of the game here is that whoever makes the first move is going to win, and the other one's going to follow in line. In other words, if I want to go see a movie and my wife wants to go see a play, well then I am going to buy tickets to that movie and come home and say, hey, look, I got us tickets. And she's going to say, damn, I guess we're going to the movie. She's going to grit her teeth and go. The same thing happens with a military coup. You've got the choice. You can stay apolitical if your officers stage a coup, or you can get involved. There are very high costs if you participate in an unsuccessful coup, but there are also high costs if you oppose a successful coup. And chances are, if your officers stage a coup, you're going to go along with them because of your interest in maintaining unit cohesion. And also because chances are, if there's a military coup, the reason is because the state is failing, as I discussed earlier. So, and regardless of where you've gone, once the coup is done, each side has an incentive to come together. So those who participated in a coup might fear a counter coup. Those who didn't participate might fear that they're going to be persecuted for opposing the coup. Both sides fear that the military will disintegrate. So again, whoever moves first is going to get what he or she wants in theory. In reality, there may be informational clues that can prompt people to counter the coup. For example, if they see lots of other officers or the masses being loyal to the incumbent government, maybe they won't go along. But in theory, this is the way it works, and it frequently works this way in general. So how do we find the breakdown of a military regime? Well, military members, and often their officers, tend to get disillusioned in their own governance when it's highly unpopular. If elites split, and some of them want to go back to the barracks, in other words, leave government, then officers are going to return to the barracks and leave the political sphere, since all but the top aren't going to get in trouble for the coup, right, for having staged the coup. They move together so that when they go back to the barracks, others are likely to follow them rather than face division of the institution. No one wants to see division of the institution. So here you have a regime change, and military regimes take power, and military officers take power, and their buddies come along with them for the most part. But then when military officers some of them decide they want to go back, it's not usually the case that other ones fight it out and say, no, the military is going to stay in charge. They tend to all go back together. And military regimes, as a result, have the shortest survival rate. So first out of the barracks and first back to the barracks. Single-party regimes tend to be much more durable. Geddes refers to these in the form of a stag hunt game. Everyone has to cooperate to encircle and kill their prey. So pretend the prey is, oh, sorry, you can't see that longer, it should say longer survival rate. So let's say the prey is right in there, right? Everyone has an incentive to circle that prey. Because if anyone, this guy over here walks away, well, the stag is going to get away. But also this guy's no one's going to get anything, right? No one's going to get anything. He's not going to get anything because he walked away, but no one else is going to get anything either. So everyone has an incentive to stay and make sure that the stag is captured. Think of this as concentric circles. At the core here, there we go. At the core here, you've got people who have the most privilege. Okay, these are the people who get the villas, who get the expensive vacations, who get the best schools, probably send their kids abroad. These are the people in the core. Okay, this is when you think of the winning coalition in a single party regime, this is really the core of the winning coalition. Further out here, though, you also have people who get lesser goods, but they still get something. Maybe over here we're talking about access to private stores, right? Not available for the rest of the public, so you can get goods that are otherwise unavailable to people. But even further out here, and we could have more and more concentric circles, we're talking about people who still have some sort of stake in the system. Maybe they get cigarette rations, right? Maybe they get occasional free drinks, whatever it is. Maybe they get occasional days off or occasional or vacation at the expense of the state, but they're brought into the system. They're co-opted into the system. And so many people, at the end of the day, have an interest in maintaining the regime, even though they're at different levels. From those at the top who get their summer villas to those at the bottom who get maybe extra food rations, right? And so this outer circle here is those at the bottom, but people within the sort of extended winning coalition. So there's a low payoff for people who leave the party. Because if you leave the party here in the center, well, you're not going to have access to your villa anymore. You're not going to have great educational opportunities for your kids or the best medical care, being sent to Switzerland for medical care. If you leave here, well, what are you gaining? You're not gaining anything. And what are you losing? Well, you're losing, your food rations, your cigarettes, your whatever those little perks are, those tiny little perks that might make you think, hey, I might as well stay in because there's no alternative anyway. So there's very low payoff for people who leave the party at any of these levels. All of them are better off if they maintain involvement, if they maintain their sort of co-opted positions. It's better to be co-opted than excluded. And this means that when there's some fragmentation, maybe like go back to the center here, a few people walk out. Well, people aren't going to walk out en masse. People are going to be more likely to wait it out rather than risk bailing unsuccessfully because of the very high opportunity cost if you don't succeed. So instead of, if a handful of people from the center walk away from the regime, well, what's going to happen is this is going to get a little bit tighter here. People are going to close the circle, so that stag will not escape. And so splits aren't as likely to produce regime change here as in military regimes. And parties, single-party states, have the longest survival rate. Now, they tend to end when some segment of the population and elites see a declining utility of staying in the system. For example, the system's no longer delivering, or popular disaffection makes it likely that defection will actually succeed, and unlikely that loyalty will pay off. At that point, you see the fall of single-party regimes. So this brings us to the last regime type we're going to talk about, which are personalistic regimes. In a personalistic regime, compared to a single-party regime, you've got much higher costs of not belonging. If you walk out of that winning coalition, you can risk imprisonment. You're certainly going to find poverty, and you could well be killed. If you're not part of that winning coalition, you're more likely to find yourself imprisoned or impoverished. And so there are much greater benefits for being in the winning coalition. You amass more you amass more if you're in a smaller number because you've got the entire state at your fingertips, and you've got a relatively small number of people who are dividing up everything from the state, right? All the income, all the goods in the state. So what this means, though, is that you amass more for this smaller number. So you keep the economy just barely viable to get what you need and keep people minimally satisfied, keep them docile. So you've got very high opportunity costs of opposing the regime if you're in the ruling circles. And so you tend to be much more stable in a personalistic regime than in a military regime. People aren't going to oppose the regime because of the high costs, at least people in the center. And they usually have significant strength and coercive capabilities that they ensure nobody else will topple the regime too. The opening is most likely to come when the leader, the person in charge, dies, since they rely on an informal and unstable, usually personal network. When you have personalistic regimes, there are frequent rotations of cadre that are used to prevent them from forming some sort of autonomous base of support. They've got very narrow support bases. These are the smallest winning coalitions of all the regime types. And the masses tend to be unloyal, again, because you've got a very small winning coalition. And so when that person in power dies, you're going to have fragmentation at elite levels, and the masses are going to potentially seize an opportunity. Unless very quickly those in the winning coalition can coalesce around another leader. The problem is that everybody wants to be that leader. That's why you frequently see openings. But you don't always see openings, because sometimes people recognize within that small winning coalition, recognize that it's in their best interest to get some sort of deal fast. So in conclusion, in personalistic and party regimes, there are very strong incentives to cooperate with each other. They've got material concerns here. In military regimes, there aren't. And they're more often dissuaded from maintaining governance because of popularity or ideology or whatever it might be. So we'll stop here.